Since we have a quorum, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 6, 2025 Design Review Board meeting. First up is roll call.
Design review member Malat. Design review member Kim. Here. Design review member Rosner.
Here.
Chair Chong.
Here.
And board member Odorcio is absent.
All right, thank you. Now is a chance for any oral communications from anyone who would like to address the Design Review Board for any items that are not on this evening's agenda. So if you have any items that are not on this evening's agenda, please come forward if you're in the room. If you're on the Zoom call, if you could use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen to indicate, and we'll let you into the room.
We have no hands raised.
All right, thank you. Staff briefing.
I have none this evening.
Moving them right along. Next is the consideration of the adoption of the minutes from January 16th Design Review Board meeting. Is there any comments on those minutes?
I'm recusing myself. I wasn't at that meeting.
Oh, I move to adopt them.
Second.
All right, and so all those in favor, so I was also not at that meeting. Just to clarify, so
Today again, but you don't need to have been at the meeting to adopt the minutes. Robert's Rule 12.1.
all right, in that case, all those in favor of adopting the minutes from January 16th?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. And we move along with the adoption of those minutes to the consent calendar. I think staff might have a comment on
I had one comment just to make sure before we do any kind of a vote here, that to make sure that we have captured what your intent was in the landscaping for that condition of approval. I just know that's the only thing that we focused on for you. I shouldn't say the only thing, but it's one that we actually focused on within the conditions of approval. So if you have any questions or if you don't agree with how we drafted that, please let us know.
Does anybody need a minute to review that?
So it would be condition number 13.
13.
We need to clarify that it's the applicant's garage.
Pull this off the consent, so can we just take public comment really quick, just about the condition? It's not about the overall project, it's just the wording of the condition.
So just basically to take public comment. All right. So yeah, for the consent calendar for 21 Mar Vista, the item for 21 Mar Vista Court, if there's anything that anybody has specifically around the condition and the wording of the condition, if you could please come forward. You have 3 minutes to make any comments. Also, anybody on the Zoom call that has a comment on condition 13 of 21 Mar Vista Court, please use the raise hand feature.
We have no hands raised.
All right. With that, anybody, so then we'll take it back to the board. Anybody have any comments or questions for staff?
Do you just want us to clarify on 13 that it says the applicant's garage, board member Kim?
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
All right. So with that, we'd be looking for a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar. All right.
I move to adopt the resolution as written.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Were there any opposed?
All right. Excellent. So it was an aye. I'm sorry. I think it was aye. All right. Excellent. With that, we approve the consent calendar for this evening and move to the First public hearing on this evening's agenda, PH 322 Karen Way. If the
Chair
app-
Tong,
yes.
let the record show that Board Member Odorcio has now arrived.
Thank you. And so this evening's format, the way to work for our public hearings is the applicant will have 20 minutes to present. There might be some questions. We'll then open it up to the public to allow the public to 3 minutes per person for any concerns that you have around the application or any comments. And then we will give the applicant an additional 5 minutes to address any of the concerns that were raised. And then we'll close the public portion of the hearing. All right, with that, the applicant.
So Mike, working, just give us a minute to get it up on the board for you.
Will it go up on the screen? Oh, great. Thank you. Good evening. I am Karen Payson. I am the architect for this remodel at 322 Karen Way. And also here tonight are Vivian Dwyer from my office and Emily Chiswick Patterson and Matan Shakam, the owners of this house. I'd like to just really start to talk about the big picture and what it is that we're looking to do here. We're looking really to do a modest one-story, to do a modest addition to a one-story house and keep it as a one-story house. The current house, built in 1953, so it's 70 years old. It's part of this division, this subdivision here. It's received a number of kind of, again, modest remodels over the years. There was a garage. It's now a master bedroom. There was another remodel a few years ago, which added a few square feet, but it's a small house. It's 1,742 square feet, which is pretty small in today's terms for a family of 5. Here you can see, oops, yeah, I turned it back on. And you said it's a pointer? There we go. So here you can see the site. So they have 3 young children in this house. We want to keep the house in the spirit of the original design. And that's why we're proposing a series of small additions in critical locations where it's meaningful and otherwise expanding it from within. The owners love the neighborhood and they have a beautiful piece of property. They want to stay on the site. So we want to expand mostly from within, making better use of some spaces, maximizing the relationship of the interior with the outside, and just expanding strategically, as I said, where we need, for a total addition of 672 square feet. So on the site plan here, this is the existing house. It's on a very steep site. There's a platform, which is where the house is. They're high above the street. They're higher than their adjacent neighbors above the street. It's a 4-bedroom house right now. This was once upon a time a garage. At some point, it was remodeled into a master suite. There's a shed back here. There's a deck back here. And the addition that we're proposing to do creates an entry, creates a master suite wing, remodels the inside here, and then adds about 5 feet to the living area. There are some constraints on this site that are really important to keep in mind. The site is a substandard lot. The area is zoned for 10,000 square foot lots, and this lot is 7,602 square feet. As I mentioned a moment ago, it slopes very steeply at the rear pretty quickly. And then there's also a private drainage easement. And so here you can see this is the setback, and there's this 10-foot wide easement in the right where the buildable area of the site is. So they have a lot of limitations here. So the strategy was really to do small additions, as I've mentioned here, that add up to a total of 672 square feet, and to also maintain use, and this is going to be the subject of a variance that we're asking for, which is one of the subjects of tonight's meeting, is to add for along the side yard there, which is the west side of the property, to line up these additions so that it's consistent. And also, when I show you the floor plan in a moment, you're going to see it's skinny in there. And then the other piece of this is adding in the easement. I met with, I spoke to Dave Issue some time ago when we saw what was going on in that drainage easement. The culvert is actually not fully inside the easement, and it's actually outside the easement in the back. So my office met with him along with the owners, and he agreed. We showed him the survey because we have documented where the culvert is, and he agreed to give us a 3-foot 9-inch encroachment into that. So here again, existing and proposed. You can see this front entrance, and this is part of one of the additions is at the front. At this front entrance, the door barely fits in this little corridor. There's no place for coats. They hang on the wall. They keep their shoes outside all year. You just walk in and it's really crowded. So a really important part of this addition that we're asking for is an entryway. It's about 152 square feet. So you can walk in, take your shoes off, take your coat off, the children and their backpacks, have some place to put them. The master suite, as I mentioned, is in this former garage. In the layout that we're proposing, we're keeping this east wing pretty much as it is, as a family room and a small home study. We're keeping the center as a living space. We want to flip over to have the kitchen closer to the door and then create this master suite, which is actually really pretty skinny. It's a 405 square foot addition to the building. The interior bedroom itself is 11 feet wide, which is kind of small for a master, but they really want to stay here and they want to maximize the outdoor space. The great thing about this environment is you can live inside and live outside a good part of the year. Maybe not today, but a lot. And so we want to retain this courtyard. Right now, there's a tree over here. There's a tree back here, which we'll be able to keep, but they really want to retain this outdoor space, this private outdoor space. It's a really lovely courtyard for the house. And that's pretty much the sum total of the addition. We're making modest changes to the front bedrooms, and that includes swapping out the existing windows for more energy efficient windows that are also just going to be slightly larger, more to today's standards, with windowsills that meet code. Right now they're high, like those houses that were built back then with really high windowsills. And we're reorganizing this central space so that this is more, this family space is a little bit more ample for a family of 5 and maybe their cousins and their friends coming over to play, etc. Materials, the appearance, it's really designed to be a quiet addition. It's designed to fit in. It's designed to be in the spirit of the original house. These mid-century, we used to call them ranch burgers in architecture school. They're really simple houses, and it's really designed to remain a simple house with gable roofs and stucco facade. The house right now is kind of a light cream color. We're looking at the new finish to be stucco, but also to go into more darker greens, kind of an earthy green, colors that I call dusty and not really bright, to really be compatible with the vegetation that it surrounds, because that very steep slope behind their house it's all greenery. It's really quite lovely. With the roofing, we acknowledge that the town's preference is for dark material on the roof. And we're also concerned about heat gain on the inside of the house. So we're sticking with an asphalt roof. You'll see in a later slide an image of the material. It's more of a silver material. It's still going to be pretty dull from the point of view of not being highly reflective, but it'll be more energy efficient. It won't absorb so much heat into the house. These elevations show, again, to your right is the existing, to the left is the proposed. The total change in height to the highest point of the new addition is less than 4 feet. So this sloping element, this big shed roof in the back, it's in living space. So here you can see large double height windows that will make that living space. It'll face south with a big overhang facing their own really private area, which is that steeply sloping part of their lot towards the back. So the current peak of roof is, I think, 13.3, and we're proposing the top of that overhang to be 17 feet, and it's in the back. You're not likely to see it from the street. In more detail on these materials, we've got stucco in the front, and as I mentioned, a pretty, sort of a dark dusty green of this smooth stucco finish. The windows, it's going to be really pretty quiet. The windows are going to be a comparable color. They'll be, we're looking at Marvin wood clad windows so that they'll have a metal cladding on the outside with a factory finish, and there'll be wood on the interior and a wood core, which will make them far superior to what's there now. And then the front door with an accent color, and then the roof being more of a medium gray. In the back, this is a view, proposed view from that hillside. We're taking out a deck and putting in a flat area of ground gravel. So it's a permeable surface. And the landscaping is really meant to just kind of fit in with what's already there. But we're creating a new space in the back that's just a little bit more compatible. The addition in the back of the master suite is actually it's into the hillside a little bit, so that as the hillside comes down and we're cutting back, we'll be putting a low retaining wall. It'll be about 3-foot retaining wall, and that's also going to be where the back wall of the bedroom is. And then I really want to talk about the variance requests, because we're requesting 2 variances. One is for the side setback, as I already mentioned, and if anybody has questions, I'll be happy to go back and show the plans again. And the purpose of the side yard setback variance request is, as I mentioned earlier, that we want to align the addition with the existing wall. We're doing that as we bring that back. I'll just go backwards, show you the floor plans again. We want to maximize the courtyard and make that really usable open space for the family. We also want to keep the major structural lines where they are, and that just has to do with the existing framing, the existing roof of the house. And so we're trying to just be as light a touch as possible. Even though it looks on paper like we're doing a lot, we're trying to minimize the impact to the structure. And we did some research, and the same variance has been granted to 2 other properties in the area since 2021. One at 281 Karen Way and another one at 52 Mercury Avenue, for a setback that was less than 6 feet as required on the side yard. Then the other variance is a retroactive variance for a front yard fence. The existing fence is in question. Let me go to the renderings. The existing fences, and that's here. And this is the one that requires a variance, as well as a section of this one. The existing fences were built in 2022 with permits as part of a landscape project, which leveled the front yard to make space for the children's play area. These fences were permitted and inspected and signed off. The entire front, but that one section of fence that I pointed out is higher on the street side than 6 feet above grade on the street side, not at the street, but on the street side. So you can see in that top right, they've got a little, it's not even a carport, it's a driveway, place to store the car. And so at that point, you measure, there's a retaining wall there because this site, as I mentioned at the outset, the house platform is higher than the properties adjacent, and it slopes steeply up the hill to the south, and it also slopes, I think, from east to west. And so this is the low point. And to keep a level area, which they built in 2022 because they didn't have good play space in the back for their young children, the retaining wall is taller than 30 inches at a certain point. The building code for safety requires 42-inch fence. So you would have to have a fence taller than 6 feet anyway. And then with the addition that we're proposing, which is not a big addition, but it's to give them a front door and a place to hang stuff, to hang their coats when they walk in, between the fence and the addition, which is right up at the setback line, there's 3 feet. You can walk by, you can bring a garbage can, but it's not really enough space to do a planting solution instead of a fence. So this, as I mentioned, you know, this whole front configuration built in 2022, it's an accommodation for a small site. And its topography, and there's just no space. There was no place except in the front to create a play area. So this was done with permits to create a play space for their primary school age children and toddlers. And due to the severe limitations of the buildable area on the site, we have this kind of strict conflict between the parking area and its fall off and where the addition is going to be. And finally, these fences have been in place since 2022 without a complaint. These folks have great relationships with their neighbors, and we've heard nothing but support from them. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I'm here to take questions.
Is there any questions for the applicant? Nope. All right, with that, we'll open up to the public. If anybody has a comment on the application at 322 Karen Way, if you could please come forward. Also, we'll go to the Zoom call. If there's anybody in the Zoom call that has any comments on this application, please use the raise hand feature. And we'll let you into the room.
We have no hands raised.
All right. With that, the applicant does have an additional 5 minutes that you don't necessarily have to use.
If you have questions, I'm happy to answer, but I have nothing else to add.
Right. Final call from questions from the board before we close the, all right, with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the board. Would anybody like to lead us off?
This is a very nice little addition, and it is similar to a lot of the other remodelings of those 995 square foot FHA houses originally that have now become 2,000, 3,000 in some cases. But in the interest of full disclosure, I remodeled the house next door, 326, 35 years ago. And my daughter, who is an architect, remodeled this house 15 years ago. But we have no interest in the houses, nor do we know the owners. The only thing I'm concerned about in the whole project is the drainage easement in the back of the property. I've seen that completely full of water, and if it is diverted in any way, it will flood the house where it's diverted. And your house has what I think is a 12-inch culvert going through there that should be cleaned out every year and checked every fall, because it is a serious flood hazard for individual houses, ironically. Same is true of every house along that side of the street. But other than that, I think it's a fine remodeling. I like the materials. I think it'll be a handsome addition.
No, yeah, unfortunately, once we close it, yeah. Suzanne?
I think I could support the project. I think I don't have as many concerns, but I do have a concern about the front fence. It does feel like it's like 9 feet high, which is unusual, versus what's nearby. And I think you can still have the protection of the children at the 42-inch level. So that's 42 plus 30. So I think I can understand a variance for the 36 plus 30 plus the 42, but having a 9-foot fence there is different in the neighborhood. It felt like it was a big wall. So that's my only concern, is that there are 6-foot fences nearby, but I didn't see a 9-foot fence. And so I could understand a 9-foot fence on the backside, but in the front side, it did sort of feel like it's a new type of closing off of from the neighborhood. And I think they could still have the privacy because it's on a plinth. So that's my only concern, but I think I can support a variance, the side variance as well. So I am supporting a variance, but not to 9 feet, whatever it is. Yeah. I can't do the math, but yeah.
I actually have the same question. It's an 8'5" fence, and I didn't understand just actually the value of that. It looked to me like it even hides some of the view, actually some of the beauty of the house. Was there am I missing something, that the height of the fence should be that high?
We
Is
can't
it-
ask the applicant a question since we've closed the public portion of the
Okay.
hearing. If you feel very strongly about asking, we could reopen the hearing and then reopen public comment again. It's- Yeah, yeah,
Could I just have some clarification on why there was a variance to begin with, and why we have such an 8 foot, 5 foot, 8 foot, 5 inch fence there?
Hi there, thank you for the question. So the applicant came through and got a design review application approval for the fence at 6 feet tall. They received a building permit for 6 feet tall, and then the application was finalized in error, as it clearly was built above 6 feet tall. So that's what we're asking for today, is for this variance for a fence that's over 6 feet tall at that point.
So it's an existing condition that was approved in error. And so they're now trying to make it legal using a variance for the height.
But just to confirm, it's because of the wall fence combination. It's not a 9-foot fence. It is a 9-foot retaining wall fence variant.
Yes, it's the combination between the retaining wall and the 6 foot tall fence itself.
Because we do measure
Yes.
and grade.
And then so in order to not have a variance, it would have to come down like a full 3 feet
I think
essentially.
it has to have a variance no matter what, because you have to have 42 inches for legal sake, and that plus the 30 inches is going to get you over the 6 feet. So the question is, do we want to allow for a variance that goes all the way to 8.5 feet, or do we want to?
Just to clarify, thank you. The 42 inches would be required by building code. So that would not require a variance.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks.
One more comment. I looked at that pretty carefully. The fence jogs back onto the adjacent property, 326, to dodge a meter box and a utility pole that are in the foreground. So it doesn't extend the full width of the property. And it kind of creates a nice joining between the two properties, actually. I don't find it overbearing in any way. And I think in some ways, many of the houses along Karen Way have high hedges and other things that create a similar back and forth along the walkway. It's kind of pretty. I don't think it's a negative.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what Jim said. I think those hedges, the very tall hedges, I think all along that neighborhood, there's varying fence heights, varying landscaping. It didn't strike me as something that was overly tall or kind of excessive. And I see why they want it and the practical reason, and I don't think the any change in aesthetics because of lowering it is really gonna be meaningful. So I would support the project as is. I couldn't agree with staff's findings for the variances in the staff report.
Okay. Back to you. I just want to, because we kind of cut you short there. Did you get you
No,
get your
that-
question answered and have any other comments?
That's fine. I'm fully supportive of the project otherwise. That's fine.
Okay. And then my comments are very similar. I think with everybody else, I think it's going to be a nice addition, or a nice, handsome project. And, you know, I like the fence did, I mean, like kind of seeing it actually there, it bothered me a little bit more. I think it was because it was a car that was parked in front of it, which is probably going to be the, you know, standard state of thing. The car parked in front of it really hides, I think, a lot of that,
Yeah.
what feels like height. So yeah, I think in the end, like for me, I was able to get behind the fence kind of as proposed in the application, and supportive of both the side yard setback variance and the fence variance. So I think it sounds like we're kind of in the same place. You maybe the only ones that it seems like it wanted to bring it down a little bit.
I wanted to bring it down just because in that neighborhood, you don't have 8, 9 foot, you know, yeah, there's a hedge, but it's a different thing than like a permanent sort of fence. And so it did feel like it was a little bit different than everything else. It's, you know, you want to have it. What's really nice about that neighborhood, I mean, yes, there are some hedges and there is a 6 foot fence here and there, but I like the fact that there's openness there and it just sort of starts walling off things. And I'm like, if this is going to start a precedent where everyone's going to build 6 foot fences along the, you know, the sidewalk. It's just, that was my only concern. Yeah, sure, you can put hedges, those can get trimmed down. It's just that once you start saying, okay, I approve an 8.5 foot fence here in, you know, along the sidewalk or in the sidewalk sort of area, I know it's set back. I mean, it just feels differently. I felt that immediately. So that's my concern. But I can go along with everything else. It's just, it felt a little like we're starting to create a wall.
Yeah, I guess I'm not necessarily too concerned about the precedent because I think that generally we take each application as its own independent application and we look at kind of the conditions, the neighborhood, all the factors that go into it. So yeah, I guess in the spirit of getting to a consensus, it sounds like we're, at least the majority is in the same place. If we wanted to maybe look for a motion with,
I'd move to accept the project as submitted, and I can make the findings for the variance. And I don't believe it is.
I think we'd be looking to to adopt the draft resolution as prepared by staff.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And the project is category from CEQA.
All of that.
All right, and do we have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. With that, we adopt the motion to adopt the resolution passes, and we move on to the next item on this evening's agenda, which would be PH2 1801 Lagoon View Drive.
On the right, you need
Yeah.
to say something on the record, Ms.
Yeah, I am recusing myself as it is my project.
And there's you have a conflict.
I have a conflict because yes, it is my project.
So what would happen, just so you know, is Mr. Rosner can certainly present the project, but when you are deliberating, he will need to recuse himself from the room and go out in the lobby.
All right, with that, if the applicant for 1801 Lagoon View Drive could come forward. Again, you have 20 minutes to present, at which point we'll open up to the public, take public comment, and provide the applicant an additional 5 minutes to address any concerns that were raised during public comments.
Good evening. A little nervous being on this side of the microphone, but thanks very much. My name's Alex Rosner. I'm the owner of 1801 Lagoon View Drive. Our architect, Ron Sutton of Sutton Suzuki, is here, certainly to answer any questions. If you have any throughout the presentation, our landscape architect that we used was Daphne Edwards. We're doing some light landscaping, which we can discuss as we get through the presentation. So just to kind of set where our project is, we're up in Hillhaven, right close to the old St. Hilary's Preserve. Our kind of view corridors are, looking this way to Mount Tam and looking this way to the Golden Gate Bridge. Here's the orientation of our plans, which I think is really useful to see. We have a pretty unique location of our property. We're pretty well set back from both our neighbors on Lagoon View Drive. We're kind of in between Mountain View and Lagoon View Drive, and we're up a hill. So the elevation and being set back from the street and a lot of the mature landscaping all throughout the property keeps us pretty hidden and gives us a lot of flexibility to improve the property, which we kind of leveraged in this situation. This kind of is a Google Earth image that shows just, again, how set back we are from, 1799 is right here, 1803 is right here, and then all the Mountain View neighbors are right here. And, you can see we're up the hill, but we're set back. So this elevation is so steep that they really don't see our house. And that gave us a lot of options as we thought through the program and the improvements. Here's the existing site map. We kind of are in the middle of the property. We have a pretty irregular shaped lot. We have, quite a few challenges just with the site. We share a driveway with the neighbors at 1799. You can see the property line is here at a pretty sharp angle, and there's now a new kind of exclusive easement that runs up through here. And then similarly on the other side, kind of at this sharp irregular angle, and we're kind of set in that middle and shifted over here. I kind of put some of the elevations just to show, how really high our property goes and different improvements throughout the property. So kind of the main ones to look at are, the driveway, and so 1799 Lagoon View Drive's main level is about at roughly like 100, kind of even with our lower level. And then our garage and driveway and main level is around 112. The current garage roof peak is 126. And then you kind of go in the backyard all the way up the hill. We have a patio at 131, a garden lookout at 135, and then the top of the screening is at 140. So currently, as is, that's, about 14 feet above our current roof height. And then, the neighbors on Mountain View are, start, maybe 10 feet higher. So it gives us a lot of, good characteristics for privacy and really feeling tucked into that hillside. Okay, the project goals. So my wife and I, we bought the house in 2019. No kids, one dog. At one point we had 2 dogs, which was not a very good decision. And we now have 2 kids. So there's 3 goals of the project, and they're all little. They could be done independently, but it really made sense to work with Ron and think about long term. What is the design to address these 3 current issues that we have, and what are the proposals that make sense for for the future. So the first goal is replacing the failing cantilevered wraparound deck. When we bought the house, it was disclosed in the inspection report that you're going to have to replace it. It was pretty damaged. I have some pictures. So that has always been top of mind, and the contractors gave it a 5 to 7 year kind of lifespan, and we're at that 5 years. So looking to do that, and our proposal is really to remove the wraparound aspect of the deck and just create 2 small, very dedicated decks. So we're actually reducing the square footage of the decks by, I think, 20 square feet, and building, 1 deck off the kitchen area and 1 deck off the living room area, and just connected with an architectural trellis. So that's what we're proposing there. The second goal is really to accommodate the 2 young children. We have a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old, and figuring out where they can be long term. Our proposal, which we'll go through, is to really reconfigure our existing lower level, which is the current main bedroom, and make it 2 bedrooms with a kids' playroom area in the middle. So that was kind of the obvious choice when we were looking at plans for their needs. And then the third is really, okay, if we lose our main bedroom area, where do we go? And we looked at a couple options, and we determined that we think the best case is really to add a new main bedroom above the existing garage. And we really think that, given the characteristics and our existing footprint, that would be a pretty good decision. Okay, so just to go quickly through each of those 3 projects, here's a view of the existing cantilever deck. This was taken from the listing. We have since changed the roof. It is a new roof, not wood shingles, but the deck remains basically what you see today, and 5 years older. You can see it starts, here's the kitchen, and it kind of can wrap around through to the living room. That has some advantages, and also has some disadvantages, the way it's set up right now. Just here's some pictures to show that I did not really internalize the challenges of a cantilever deck and some of the problems it can create. This one in particular, we finally caught about 4 years in, that was the source of a really bad leak. Every time it rained, it leaked, and when we finally figured out this was the source and we did the work, we found termites. So we quickly thought, if we replace the deck, maybe we shouldn't do cantilever, just because of the maintenance issues, and obviously there's safety issues involved. You can see kind of this was this is currently some of the joists. There's just so much dry rot. So again, here's kind of the existing deck floor plan. You see this, here's the wraparound. We can get to this towards the end, but it is currently non-conforming. It cuts into the side yard setback, 7, almost 8 feet currently, when, so 4 feet more than it can. And we thought, and again, to replace the 1 deck with these 2 decks. So they're 2 pretty modest decks. We've got the one about 200 square foot deck, 12 by 15, right off the kitchen. So this is our kitchen. And, we figured it'll be a really nice area just for some outdoor dining. It's not big. It's basically the same size as kind of our dining room. It can fit maybe a dining table for 6 people. And then on this other side, having a 328 square foot kind of just living room deck. So can have a small little couch, maybe a table here, and kind of tucked away in the corner. And it's really nice because it's super private. Our mountain view neighbors are up here, and our lagoon view neighbors are down here. So it gives us a lot of privacy and some nice outdoor area. Here's some of the elevations of what it'll look like. It's going to be a little bit more modern, with just some steel and the cable railing to replace our existing kind of wood and glass frame. So we think that, with the kind of addition design, which we'll get to, gives the general house and the exterior a nice little pop of modern and a little bit of a facelift. The second, so accommodate the 2 young children by reconfiguring the lower level main bedroom. Here's our existing main bedroom. there aren't dimensions aren't right here, but it's really big. Currently, like this whole area are the master bath and the laundry. That's the size of our kitchen. The closet and the dressing area is our dining room, and all this is the current living room. So it's a sizable space, and it was great when it was just the two of us. But having two young children, we really want to we shouldn't have 25% of the house or something like that as our main living area. So our main bedroom. So we wanted to capitalize on that. The also nice thing is the stairs kind of drop you in the middle of the level, and it gives us a lot of options to create this proposal, which is basically just you come down the stairs and do this playroom, and then you have two ensuite kids' bedrooms, pretty modest size, 11 by 13 and 9.5 by 13 for the children. So we're really happy with this design. It gives them this kind of set common area that they'll be able to grow into, have their own space, have access to the patio. And then also they're, when they're, teenagers, and they can have their own bathroom and their own space. I was really worried. I've seen a lot of houses, kind of originally built in the 50s and 60s like ours, and the lower levels to get multiple rooms, you have these hallways and it feels dark. And we're really lucky that the stairs kind of drop you into that middle, and you can go on both sides. So it gives us that that ability to maintain the sunshine and the light and airiness. Here's the elevations. The glazing is pretty similar. We're going to shift over a couple doors. We have a fair amount of glazing currently, and it's really, we think it's hidden from the neighbors because we have a lot of vegetation and some fencing around. And we're keeping that relatively similar. And yes, goal number 3 was to figure out where the main bedroom would go. And we looked at a couple options, and we actually drew some inspiration from, this was from the 1993 design review of our predecessors. And they originally proposed a second story. And when we were reading the minutes, it seemed like it had maybe been approved or there was support for it. They ultimately came back without it, and they dug out more the lower level, but it kind of gave us some ideas that, hey, we can maybe build up without blocking views, without impacting the uphill neighbors. And that was really appealing to us. So we researched that, we looked into it. We also were looking at some of the neighborhood designs and some of my personal favorites of the neighborhood, both done by Ron here. Probably my favorite house in the neighborhood is 465 Ridge. It really has some nice elements of just, a little bit bringing in some modern 1925 Straits View, also some beautiful elements, a bit more modern than what we're proposing, but we really like these ideas. And, Ron, I think, kind of designed a beautiful addition, which we'll see in a second. But so the upper level is right here. It's above the garage. One also really beneficial thing is we're taking the stairs from our current family room. Our current family room is quite long. It's about 22 feet long, and we're able to just kind of shave off 4 feet, add the stairs. Doesn't change the functionality of the family room. Doesn't change any of the doors or the windows. We were just taking that 4 feet in the kind of the back of the living room, and putting some stairs out. So it was a really attractive option that really doesn't make us disrupt a lot more than we need to. Here's a rendering of the proposal. So we've got this like really nice kind of aesthetic, small Juliet balcony. I think we really wanted to add dimension to the addition. We didn't want it to just look super vertical like that first image from 1993. We like the concept but not the design. So we wanted to add a little bit more depth to it, a little bit more beauty to it, to be honest. And we like these pops of the modern elements that really, again, kind of give the mid-90s house a facelift, and we're really happy with what Ron designed. Real quick, some of the project kind of components. Here's kind of the proposed site plan, and I think, again, just kind of highlighting it. It's obviously, you can see it in the plans. It's pretty hard to make out here, but we're super far from neighbors. This addition is, you know, about 60 something feet from their garage, 75 feet from the house, about 20 feet from the setback, but because of this exclusive easement, we're about 40 feet from the fence. So we maintain kind of that separation between all of our neighbors. We're not really adding much lot coverage, which we'll get into, but that's kind of just from a perspective of the location and kind of our distance from an impact on the neighbors. Here's some of the elevations. I think the one thing that caught, if you kind of see this change, you know, we have our current roof lands at about 126. It's much steeper than what we're proposing. This kind of ridge is at 133. So we're only adding about 7 feet 7 inches to the height of the project. We're keeping it, you know, pretty modest in terms of what we're adding from a height perspective. Obviously, it's going to be 21 feet 7 inches, you know, well below the 30-foot max. So we wanted to keep that low profile, and that's really because we're blocking a little bit of our own view in that patio, and it's not terrible, but we didn't want to go much higher or anything like that because we wanted to maintain the openness when we're up there. Here's another elevation. I'm just tracking time. I want to get through some of the rest of the stuff. The material board, we're pretty much using, you know, matching shingles here, matching color scheme. For some reason, I like the existing taupe. It really just blends into the landscaping and feels very zen. So we're trying to keep within that color palette. The one thing on the landscape plan, so we have this existing mimosa, which is really cool and architectural, but unfortunately is past its prime, and there's a bit of a safety concern with one of the dead branches. You know, it does some okay screening, but there's a lot of holes and gaps between it. So we're proposing to remove that and plant 2 Saratoga Bay laurels that'll be really nice for screening in this peninsula. So it's really meant to screen between our new deck and the neighbors at 1799. So we're just adding that existing, adding a lot more kind of green screening to the already existing oak, which provides some really good screening. So variance requests, quickly go through these. We are requesting 2 variances, both because we are making improvements and changes to existing awarded variances. So the first is we currently do have a lot coverage variance that was awarded in 1993 or 95 design review. We're at 16.1. We're only adding 76 square feet. So we're at 16.4. We're still under the FAR allowable. So I'll show you where a lot of that lot coverage is coming, but it's that minor change. And similarly, our current deck is into the side yard setback that borders 1803 Lagoon View Drive and 1830 Mountain View. And we're bumping really the deck out 18 inches, but we're kind of changing a little bit of that angle in the front, and because the property line is at an angle, the setback extension is an additional 2 feet 4 inches into that existing the existing nonconformity. But like I said, here's kind of a zoom up of kind of that property line. We're really adding just that 18 inches just for better egress. Right now, it's a little tight. It's about 10 feet wide, and to comfortably add just even a small little piece of furniture and be able to kind of get by and get out of the deck, we kind of need that 18 inches just to make use of the outdoor space. And the lot coverage is kind of mostly here. It's about 85% of the lot coverage is kind of coming from this interior addition, kind of above our patio, that kind of allows us to, you know, continue on with the stairs and kind of shape out that addition. So that's where that's coming from. Staff, you know, thank you for kind of seems like they can make the findings for those variance requests in the staff report. And we agree with that.
15-second warning.
Yeah, the last one is just neighbor support. We've had support. There's been a little bit of a late mail. The dark green, we've had some letters prior to middle of this, and all our Mountain View neighbors, we've had conversation with, and we're supportive of the project. And we just hadn't received letters before. Today, we received one late mail, and then 1799. Their architect's been working with our architect, and they also sent.
We
in some
could get you to
late mail today.
wrap it up. You'll have 5 additional minutes later.
Okay, cool. So I can answer any questions about anything coming from the neighbors and support for the neighbors after this.
All right. Any questions for the applicant before we open it up to the public?
What are your new decks made of? What's the surface material?
It would probably be,
If you could come.
You're
up
gonna
to
need to go to the
microphone.
mic. Thank you.
we haven't yet decided. It would be a weathered material, either a Trex type material, or it would be cedar or redwood weathered. Great.
And the exterior walls are,
Well, the walls are, they're columns, the steel, you mean what's supporting the deck?
no, I'm talking about the general house exterior. Is that changing? at all?
Well, the main house stays the shingles that are there,
Okay.
and then the addition has horizontal lap siding.
Okay, thank you.
Any other additional questions for the applicant or the architect? All right, with that, we will open it up to the public. If you would like to speak on this project, please come forward. We'd ask you to state your name and your address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes per individual.
You ready to
Yeah,
go?
whenever you're ready.
Sure. My wife Holly and myself Ike, we own 1799 Lagoon View to the downhill and to the southwest of the proposed project. When the story poles first went up, and is there a way to get that letter up on the screen to show the pictures? So I have to ask.
Yeah, is this the letter that came in the late mail?
Yes, it is.
Does everybody have that? I've got it in front of me. I see you've got it in front of me. Jim, do you have the late mail? And then, do you have the late mail? Okay. We can definitely wait, but we also have the pictures here in front of us if, yeah. Okay,
If you can.
oh, there we go.
You guys need to turn the lights down a little bit?
Yeah, I'm good because I've got it in front. I'm gonna look at this one, but does anyone, yeah, maybe go ahead and flip the lights on so everybody can see.
First page, please. Thank you. And we'll just do quickly through the pictures. So when the story poles first went up, we said, oh my goodness, that's a big impact on our backyard. Without the strings between the tops of the poles, I couldn't really understand them. So we asked Michael Rex, our architect, to explain them to me. And he came over and he took a look and he said, yeah, it's fairly substantial from this perspective. And the eave that projects this way 4 feet, plus the additional cantilever over the existing garage, brings that whole facade 5 feet towards this particular viewpoint. So we said, my goodness, what can we do? And he said, well, don't get all spun up about it, make a hue and a cry. Why don't you try and do something on your side to ameliorate the problem? Just get it done, which is kind of my personality. So with his suggestion, next page, please. We put in a Photinia hedge. And this is from the same perspective. After we've got 5 of those plants in, I think over time, the gaps between the plants will fill out and we're solving the privacy problem from the backyard fairly quickly. Next picture down, please. Okay. From our entryway looking up, it also would have a similar impact. Those 2 pines provide good screening right now, but we suspect when the applicant files a vegetation management plan, the fire department's going to say, wait a minute, pines, they're a cause of most of our risk. and the fire department would ask the applicants to remove them. If that's the case, we would ask that the applicant replace the 10-inch pine, which is the one on the right near their pool, with a tree of comparable size. So first preference is to keep that pine. If the fire department agrees with it, great. But if they don't, can we replace it with something with similar screening value? So next picture down, please. We kept going with the idea of this hedge. Thank you again, Michael. It was a great idea. And you can see here, we've got 3 of the plants in. We're extending it further to the left, and it's doing its job. So it's providing screening, and at our expense and effort, we think we've
15
solved
second
much.
warning, 15-second warning.
Okay, we solved much of the problem on this side. So we've got 2 smaller requests from the applicants in this board, and we could scroll to the last part of this picture. The downloading, oh, I see a typo here. The downloading on the proposed dining deck would shine directly into a driver's eyes if you're driving up. It's a 2-story element in front of a retaining wall. And as the applicant pointed out, it's a very steep lot. So we're asking that instead of choosing a fixture that could be tilted towards the driver, that we use one that points straight down, limited to about 33 degrees towards the street. The second request is a consideration of a smaller eave. The 4-foot eave sounds and looks very large. It adds to the mass without adding that much value, because rather than hiding the windows from the sun, there are cutouts. And so you don't get the solar protection, and it adds to the bulk of the building without much value.
If I could get you to wrap up.
Sure.
Thanks.
So thank you. I want to thank Michael Rex, and he worked with Ron Sutton to come up with some ideas, and please consider our 3 requests. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any additional comment on this application? On 1801 Lagoon View Drive? Let's go to the Zoom call. If you're on the Zoom call, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and we'll let you into the room if you have any comments.
We have no hands raised.
All right, with that, any additional, anybody else in the public here before we bring it back to the applicant? All right, with that, the applicant has 5 minutes to address any of the concerns that were raised.
Yeah, I'll quickly, tell me when I'm starting.
I've started a timer.
Oh, yeah, I'll quickly address, thanks, for the comments, and for Michael Rex for working with Ron, the last couple weeks on this. I would say from, the first to the screening perspective, screening is super important for us. I think with those pines, if they were required to remove, we would want to find the gaps of where there's issues that we can see into their property and they can see into our property. It seems like those hedges have done a really good job. So thank you to our neighbors for proactively, planning them. And I think we've been doing a lot of changes on that boundary line after some historical things. And so I think that's really improving. I think from a light perspective, the good news is we share a driveway. So we're super cognizant of downlights getting in driver's eyes, because they would be our eyes too. So we're definitely happy to look at options and make sure that, the driving's safe. I'll let Ron talk about the eaves real quick and give us a time check.
What you're 1 minute, 17 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the situation with the eaves is, when we created the house, it was to create some kind of a fresh look to the house beyond what was there. The existing eaves are about 36 inches, which is true. And so we had actually had them at 5 feet at one time, and we did pull them back to 4. And 4 is by code, planning code, that doesn't count as lot coverage. And so I think we understand that doesn't mean excessive eaves. So part of what you do and we do as architects is create architecture that's interesting. And we don't believe cutting that eave back 1 foot affects them in any particular magnitude of way. So, but the design actually does get affected by that. It's almost 25% of the overhang, which creates this kind of more horizontal feel to this house, a little more contemporary feel. The houses that he showed you at the beginning that I had done, the one that he likes a lot, that's a 4-foot eave, and I don't think that looks excessive. The other house, they're 6-foot eaves. So eaves do add a certain architectural element to the design, rather than just having another vanilla kind of house at 3-foot eaves. And so we did study a 3-foot eave. We changed the perspective. It made quite a difference. They didn't like it, and so our feeling is that it's this design board is about architecture and about design, and it does make a difference in the design that we feel we would like to stay with if we can. I think the planting as it fills in, I don't know that they're going to see the addition. It's almost gone now from what we've seen with their planting, which is appreciated by my clients as well. So we would like to maintain that eave if possible.
Any additional, you're at 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah.
If you-
I guess we got, the last thing we kind of got cut off, just talking about the neighbor, that neighbor support and, which is really all my neighbors uphill. We did work with them. We went to make sure if we build up, does it hit anyone's sight lines? So yeah, like I said, 1840, I think they're the only house that can actually see any of the story poles from their house. And they wrote a letter of support saying it impacts, no view at all, and they're fully supportive. And the rest of those neighbors, 18, 10, 20, and 30, you can sometimes see some story poles if you go outside of their yard and kind of look over on a deck or something, but everyone is really supportive. 1820 wrote in a letter today as well. So I just wanted to cover kind of the impact from above. In Hillhaven, it's really hard to build up because of where existing homes are, views, and often then you have to excavate more bigger lot coverages. And we're really fortunate in this design that we have the ability to really not impact anyone's view up above. So that's I'll kind of leave it at that. And again, if you have any questions for myself or Ron, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for the applicant?
Would you mind showing me those pictures of the homes that you liked before, just the 2 homes
Sure.
that Ron designed?
You got it.
And just to clarify, this is a 4-foot eaves on the house on the left.
Yeah, that's correct.
On the
left.
On the elevation that's facing us, I think they're bigger as you
They're bigger
move.
as they go back to the
Yeah.
side where the sun is affecting it more. And the one on the right, 2 things to note, all those eaves are 6 feet and it gets a little bit deeper. I don't think that necessarily adds to the mass, but also you'll notice the downlights. They don't really shine in your eyes. And we'll have the same kind of downlights. They're just little white spots there in that eave. The windows give off more light than the downlights.
And one more thing, just clarify, you had no problem with the similar screening or the downlighting, but you wanted to keep the eaves at 4 feet. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I think.
So answer that question. Yeah, so I do have a question just kind of on the screening. So currently, the landscape plan does not call for the removal of the pine tree that's
Correct.
Okay.
We're only removing.
And
Yep. Go ahead.
maybe the question for staff, is there the possibility that some of the review by the fire department or something like that has the removal of that tree?
It could.
Okay. All right. And then I guess maybe a question back to the applicant. So kind of what would be, if that were to occur and the fire department were to say it has to go, what's the kind of plan on what would be the replacement tree or screening?
That's a good question. We hadn't had any specifics. We've been thinking through immediately next to the 10-inch pine where my neighbors referred to would like to be replaced is actually kind of a aged out cherry. So we've been thinking, okay, what can be kind of a nice large piece in that place? We're open to a lot. I mean, we like Japanese maples a lot for that entryway. They do lose their leaves, so that's actually why we went with the laurels, which are evergreen. Um, for the planting in the middle, as opposed to something that there were a couple options, but were deciduous, which we wanted the evergreen. So we don't have an exact plan for that, other than to say like we want the screening as much as I think our neighbors. I think that 10-inch pine in particular next to the pond blocks a lot of, their roof. So it is important for us, and something we're happy to work with neighbors or landscape architect to solve.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. All right. With that, we will close, close the public portion of the hearing. And if we could ask the applicant to step into the lobby, please. Anybody like to lead us off?
I think this is a sensitively designed addition. There are some things that I'm a bit concerned about. One is you're in what amounts to one of the more sensitive and difficult fire regions in Tiburon. It's up right next to the open space on the backside. And wood surface decks are probably going to be one of the main fire starters in Tiburon if we ever have a fire. I would suggest that you go to some form of non-combustible material on that, whatever it is. Shingles are another. On my own house, which I put shingles on as a young architect, I'm slowly converting to stucco on the outside of the building bit by bit by bit. And you have an opportunity here to do that. I think you should consider the second story addition and other things to start getting yourself fire hardened up there. There are a lot of plants on that property, on both properties, and we're adding more for the screening planting down the hill, which I think is a nice thing to do. I would suggest that in all fairness to your neighbor, you try to keep the tops hedged. And I'm speaking now to the adjacent neighbor, the tops hedged at about what you need for screening rather than letting them grow into view problems. One suggestion for your removal of trees is an evergreen pear. They grow to medium height, not terribly fast, but they're a good evergreen screening material. I think overall it's sensitive to all the neighbors. I checked all the uphill neighbors and all the side neighbors and didn't see any particular privacy issues. The windows are nicely placed, and I can make the findings for the variances, both of them. So I don't have anything else.
Suzanne?
I can make the findings for the variances. My only comment is something about just being sensitive to any downlights just because of the elevation change between the neighbors. And just, I don't know what that means. I don't know how we can articulate something, but I'm sure because they're neighbors, they'll work out something that's mutually beneficial to the two. So that's my only comment. And I feel confident that the neighbors will work together to build enough screening, whatever plant species that's year round. So I'm not sure if we have to add that to the conditions, but maybe we should articulate, some type of thing just to memorialize that we do prefer something that screens all year round versus a deciduous type of species.
I guess I do have one question more for the panel here. I couldn't appreciate from where the story poles were, understanding about these eaves, is that, especially from the architect's view, is that a particular problem, this 3 foot versus 4 foot? Is that something that we should ask for request to change?
I mean, I was going to comment on that for my comments, which is, like, I mean, I think that large eaves like that is like a nice feature, right? And there's many times when applications have come through with large eaves and we've pulled them back for view reasons or for kind of impact on neighbors reasons. And so, I mean, I specifically, there's a house that, it kills me every time I see it. It was on Centro West that had the first application version had these beautiful eaves, right? But it was clearly going to impact some side neighbors' views that we ended up pulling it back. And every time I kind of look at it, I'm like, what it could have been, right? And the beauty of like, kind of these nice eaves. I don't think that for me, the 4 foot eaves, because they don't cause like a direct impact in themselves, like to a view or whatever, it doesn't bother me. It's also, as a town, we've set the 4 foot as the standard that doesn't require the to be included in lot coverage variance. So like, I don't think it's kind of over eaved, at least my opinion.
And the eaves also serve a cooling purpose as well. So it directs sunlight away from the it prevents from the interiors from heat gain. So I do appreciate what the purposes are now. And if these were two neighbors where, they were 20 feet apart, yeah, then, and they were on the same level, on the same elevation, I could see an impact, but the impact here is that someone sees it. And that's, to me, the less of a concern than a view impact where it directly blocks a neighbor's view of a notable site or notable, what do you call it? Thing like, the Golden Gate Bridge or Mount Tam or something. So I'm okay with it.
I also feel like the eaves add a little bit of like that element, like almost like makes it look less vertical by coming out a little bit. From a design standpoint. Other comments?
That's, I guess, too, I just want to know, there is an agreement of, again, similar screening and handling downlighting. How do you incorporate that, or do you just make that between a neighbor's agreement? What do you do with that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that was, I mean, kind of going to, was that your last item?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, like, that was gonna be my comment. It never works out to just say, oh, for two neighbors to work it out, like at some future date that's not coming through. I think the only way I'm comfortable with it, I think we have to assume that like, hey, there is a possibility that the pine tree gets pulled out, and I think we need to specify what would be the appropriate replacement. Like if we knew that was a fact now, then I don't think we'd be okay with just kind of leaving that as a blank on the landscaping plan.
I mean, we usually specify for the lights, a shielded light, and so we can do something like that. But you're right, I think we should have a contingency and articulate
Yeah, I think
something.
I would envision it just a condition, additional condition of approval that states that if in the eventuality the pine tree's pulled out, and then we just specify the kind of, I guess, general type and size that would have to be like a sort of replacement.
Can you use terminology like they suggest, a similar shielding, or similar screening, or is that too vague?
I think it's too vague. I think you just say evergreen species.
And then what we can do is specify like the size as far as like
Okay.
what inch box or like, so maybe just to staff, like, is that something we could do as a condition that like in the eventuality that
Yes,
that the fire department requires something, then we can specify exactly what would go in that place?
right. And the box that you would like, the sizing, that it's evergreen and a size of a 24 or something, 24-inch box, nothing less than that.
Not less than 24.
Yeah.
And
It's the flags outside. It's not actually the wind. It's the wind. Excuse me, that didn't come out right. It's just flags outside. You're gonna be fine. I locked all the doors so they didn't bang anymore. So it didn't sound like someone was breaking in.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like a 24 would be, I think, the minimum, like.
Yeah, you can go 36 if you want to. It's the 36-inch box. You don't want to get too big because this area up here is all serpentine. And
Yeah, so-
you dig a hole in serpentine and it's like digging a hole in a concrete box. It doesn't drain well. So you have to bring in a lot of soil. But I would say 36 inches would.
So I think we just say no less, no
Less than
so wait,
36.
So that was, I'm not a landscape architect. So from, does 36 go in without any problem?
Well, 36 would be the most you'd want to have to get in there. I mean, dig a
very
4-foot hole and
Yeah,
you're
that's
digging it
pretty
in
large. I mean, it's a
concrete. That's a
massive-
lot.
Huge, that's
sure.
pretty huge,
That's a
but
big tree.
But if, I mean, we normally start with the 24.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we say no less than 24, and then
Okay.
if the applicant wants to put in a larger, I think there's a desire to have screening there, so I think a 24-inch box is still a very large tree. So, all right, and then the downlights. I think
I think you can just say shielded downlights, as long as it's shielded, you are going to end up getting screening at a certain level. It's very hard, though, to get a dining room light shining down under this circumstance when you're looking up at it from a driveway that's 20 feet lower.
Yeah.
So I'm
but
not,
that's like 60 feet away though.
it's 35 or 40 at the most.
Yeah, I think the concern that that was in the late mail was around also the ability for it to rotate off axis. So I think it would just be like a non-rotating, a fixed, thank you, fixed downlight. Okay.
Can I ask for clarification on that? As part of the draft resolution, condition 6 does require that all exterior lighting is shielded and downlit.
Right.
Do you want me to add language that says it's fixed?
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
All right. So it sounds like we're in the same kind of similar place on everything. Jim, I had the one note on the non-wood deck from a fire standpoint.
I don't think we have to put it in.
Okay.
That's just a heads up to the architect, frankly.
All right. So yeah, I guess in that case, we'd be looking for a motion with, assuming that we're also in the same place on the eaves. That we looking for a motion with the 2 additional.
I move to, there was a resolution in there, just like, yeah, with the additional conditions, fixing the downward facing lights and exterior lights. And yeah, and so that's fixed. And the second being that if in the event that the pine of interest is asked to be removed, that it's replaced with an evergreen tree that is no smaller than a 24-inch container.
And that you can make the findings for the variance.
We can make the findings for the 2 variances sought for the lot coverage as well as the side setback.
And that the
And then it's
project,
categorically exempt
Thank
from
you.
CEQA.
my favorite one. Thank you.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. With that, the draft resolution passes and we move on to the last item this evening, which is adjournment. Thank you,
Just
everyone.
getting all excited.
You're like, what?